Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Gaurav Sharma, and with me is Renuka, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. The headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi participates in the first Summit for Democracy at the US President Joe Biden's invitation. Mr. Modi says democratic spirit is ingrained in Indians. India pays last respects to the Chief of Defence Staff General Bipin Rawat. Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett expresses condolences at the tragic loss of General Bipin Rawat. Finance Minister of India Nirmala Sitharaman says inclusion, investment, innovation and institutions should support global recovery. Farmer unions announce suspension of agitation against the 3 farm laws and related issues. India extends ban on scheduled international flights till January the 31st, 2022. And the UK, Canada and Australia announced diplomatic boycott of the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics. As India marches towards administering 150 crore vaccine doses against COVID-19, news about the fresh corona variant is also causing concern. In this situation, we appeal to our listeners to get fully vaccinated at the earliest and also help others get vaccinated. Please follow these 3 simple steps. Wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki duri for social distancing, and focus on hand and face hygiene. For any COVID-related information and guidance, contact the national helpline numbers 011-2397-8046 and 1075. And now, the news in detail. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi participated in the first Summit for Democracy on Thursday at US President Joe Biden's invitation. This virtual summit envisages participation of leaders from the government, the civil society and the private sector. Sources said this closed-door session saw interventions from 12 select countries, including India. In his remarks, Prime Minister Modi recalled that exactly on this date 75 years ago, India's Constituent Assembly had held its first session. He highlighted India's civilizational ethos as one of the original sources for democracy. Mr. Modi said that the democratic spirit, including respect for rule of law and pluralistic ethos, is ingrained in Indians. He added that the Indian diaspora carries it too and contributes to the economic well-being and social harmony of their adopted homes. The Prime Minister emphasized the need for democratic countries to deliver on values enshrined in their constitutions. He also outlined sensitivity, accountability, participation and reform orientation as the 4 pillars of the Indian democratic governance. He stressed that the principles of democracy should also guide global governance. Mr. Modi also said that technology companies should contribute to preserving open and democratic societies, given technology's ability to impact democracy positively or negatively. Sources said as a special gesture, Prime Minister Modi was invited to participate in the main leaders' plenary session hosted by the US President. Tomorrow, Mr. Modi will deliver India's national statement at the summit. Here's a report.
The Biden administration has invited India, UK and Japan at a 2-day democracy summit which begins on Thursday and will continue till Friday. Taiwan is among the 110 invitees of the virtual democracy summit. The move is intended to show solidarity with a key regional partner, but risks angering China. The online gathering is an event Mr. Biden vowed to host while he was a candidate for presidential election last year, with the goal of rallying like-minded countries around efforts to fight corruption and authoritarianism and advance human rights. The Biden administration has also invited Poland and the Philippines. NATO ally Turkey has not been invited for the summit. This is Suparna Bhatia for World News, All India Radio.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh and NSA Ajit Doval paid floral tributes to the Chief of Defence Staff General Bipin Rawat, his wife and the defence personnel who lost their lives in the chopper crash yesterday. The mortal remains of those who lost their lives in Wednesday's chopper crash were brought to Palam Air Base in Delhi by an Indian Air Force aircraft from Sulur. Chiefs of the Army Staff, the Naval Staff and the Air Staff also paid their last respects. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh met the bereaved families of General Bipin Rawat and other armed forces personnel who lost their lives in the chopper crash. Civilians and military personnel can pay their tributes to General Bipin Rawat on Friday. Thereafter, the mortal remains will be taken in a gun carriage for the funeral. Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett has said General Bipin Rawat was a true leader and a true friend of Israel. Israel's top leadership has expressed condolences to the government and the people of India at the tragic and shocking loss of its first Chief of Defence Staff. Naftali Bennett in a tweet said, his thoughts and prayers are with the families of those who perished in the tragic helicopter crash in India. Finance Minister of India Nirmala Sitharaman virtually participated in the G20 International Seminar hosted in Bali by the G20 Presidency of Indonesia. Speaking on the G20's theme for the year, Recover Together, Recover Stronger, Mrs. Sitharaman stressed on the fact that for a strong, sustainable, balanced and inclusive recovery of the global economy, it is imperative to ensure collective progress of all the countries. She also stressed on the importance of inclusion, investment, innovation and institutions to support the path of global recovery. Ms. Sitharaman highlighted that so far, India has administered over 1.25 billion doses of COVID vaccine and supplied more than 72 million vaccine doses to over 90 countries.
India's Samyukta Kisan Morcha have announced to suspend their agitation against the three farm laws and related issues. Addressing a press conference in Delhi, farmer leader Gurnam Singh Charuni said the decision has been taken in the meeting of the farmer leaders. He said agitating farmers will start leaving the site of agitation from Saturday. The Parliament had repealed these laws on the first day of the ongoing winter session of the Parliament. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in his address to the nation on the 19th of last month, had announced that the new farm laws enacted in 2019 would be repealed in the winter session of the Parliament. He had appealed to all protesting farmers to go home. The Prime Minister had also said a committee would be constituted to look into all aspects of agriculture. NHRC Chairperson Justice Arun Mishra has greeted the nation on the eve of Human Rights Day. The day is celebrated on 10th of December every year since 1950 in commemoration of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights by the United Nations in 1948. In his message, the NHRC chairperson said the celebration is to reinforce the fact that every human being is born with inalienable rights which are embedded in the basic ethos of equality. Justice Mishra said India is world's largest vibrant democracy, celebrating its unity and diversity. He pointed out that India has given the world the concept of Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam and Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah. He added that this belief was reflected in the helping hand extended by India to the global fraternity during the COVID-19 pandemic. In today's Hot Spot section, we bring you a discussion on developments in Afghanistan. The participants are Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat, and Nilofa Roy Chaudhary, journalist.
As the winter approaches, the Afghan humanitarian crisis continues to grow because the Taliban government has not received any kind of recognition. Banks in Afghanistan are failing and the humanitarian crisis is reaching desperate proportions. There are some reports which even indicate that up to 1 million children might be starving there soon until and unless some kind of desperate measures are taken. Now, India had taken a decision to send 50,000 metric tons of wheat and life-saving drugs, which it wanted to send via the land route over Pakistan. Pakistan delayed on a decision for a while, but has finally agreed. And now the modalities are being finalized to actually begin sending this material from the Wagah border. Now, India's decision to send this desperately needed humanitarian aid to Afghanistan was taken soon after the conference of regional national security advisors hosted in November by Indian NSA Ajit Doval. We are joined today by Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar to discuss recent developments in Afghanistan and try and understand where the country can go from here at this point of time. I was wondering, Ashok, how important is this decision to send 50,000 metric tons of wheat and, life-saving drugs? How much is this needed in Afghanistan, and what does it indicate that Pakistan has finally allowed this transshipment to take place over land?
Thank you, Nilova. Excellent questions you posed. And let me say, first of all, that, Taliban took control in Kabul on the 15th of August. So it is close to about 4 months that they have been in power, so to say. But so far, there has not been a single foreign government that has recognized the Taliban dispensation. And the reasons for that are many. But not going into those reasons at this stage, what is also becoming clear is that there is a huge humanitarian catastrophe that is building Afghanistan. That is because they don't have money. All the foreign exchange reserves that they had in foreign banks, they have been frozen. The Americans have told the IMF and the World Bank not to release any funds to Afghanistan, as a result of which they don't have money to get food. They don't import needed medical supplies. And there have been reports which seem to suggest that more than 50% of the 38 million population of Afghanistan is suffering from malnutrition. And if something is not done urgently to take care of the situation, then by next year, by middle of next year or something, there would be more than 95% who would be suffering from malnutrition. Then in 12th of October, if my memory serves me correctly, when the G20 special summit on Afghanistan was held, Prime Minister Modi again repeated that offer. And on 20th of October, when the Moscow format discussions took place, Indian delegation had a direct meeting with the Taliban representatives and also told them. But the glitch there has been that Pakistan has not allowed trade or people to travel over the land route. That is why we had to go to Chabahar and try to set that route into operation. But we said that for the humanitarian aid, and particularly since Pakistan has been going to all the global capitals asking those countries to come and support the administration in Afghanistan and also the Afghan people. So we said that this would be the easiest way of taking our food, grains and also medical supplies from India to Afghanistan. Now, Pakistan took a long time, first of all, in giving permission. And then it has been raising absolutely specious arguments like saying that this will not be carried by Indian trucks to Afghanistan, but will be carried by Pakistan trucks. Now, this was something that was not acceptable because then it could have been projected amongst the Afghan people that this was aid that was coming from Pakistan. It was being given by Pakistan.
The problem, Ashok, is how long can any government be sustained on the basis of this kind of piecemeal humanitarian gestures coming in? I mean, no government, as you very rightly said, in the world is, seeking to legitimize the Taliban. So what then is the alternative? I mean, how can anything work if the administration of a country or if the government of a country is not recognized by anybody? If the banks are failing, money cannot come in, the assets of Afghanistan have been frozen. How then is it possible to circumvent this kind of acute humanitarian crisis that is building up?
Absolutely. I think these are excellent questions and excellent comment that you have made, that no government can sustain itself just on the basis of such sporadic and off-the-cuff humanitarian assistance. But the problem there lies totally with the Taliban rather than with the international community. Because you would recall, Nilova, that when the Taliban took power on the 15th of August and then the Americans left on the 31st of August, then there were a number of countries, Pakistan, China, Russia and Iran particularly, who were very keen, and you could put Turkey and Qatar also in that list, who were very keen to recognize the Taliban dispensation. But then they also found that the promises that were made to them by Mullah Ghani Baradar, who was heading all the talks and negotiations from Doha and been doing for the last several years. From 2018, he was also talking with the Americans when the Americans started negotiations with the Taliban in Doha. So he has been, and he had given commitments to all these governments and many more that there would be an inclusive government when the Taliban comes to power. They will have an inclusive government. They would have representation of the minorities, of the Tajiks, who comprise about 30% of the population. And they would have representation of the Uzbeks, who also are about 8 to 10%, of the Hazaras, of the Shias, and of course the rights of women to study, to work, to go out of their homes, of girls to go to school, university, that all these rights would be protected and would be safeguarded. Now, unfortunately, what has happened, Nilova, is that after the Taliban has come to power, they have not complied with these commitments, with these promises that they had made. And I think to make matters worse, people like Mullah Ghani Baradar and Sher Stanekzai, who had been in the forefront of negotiations with the foreign governments, they have been sidelined. And now they have put in place, you remember when the DGISI, as Hamid, he had gone to Kabul from Islamabad on the 4th of September, basically to set up the government and the administration. And you find that many of the most important positions, like that of the Interior Minister, has been taken over by Sirajuddin Haqqani. And Haqqanis are so closely intertwined with the foreign spy agency of Pakistan, that is the ISI. Also, the intelligence chief is from the Haqqani network, and the whole of eastern part of the country is from the Haqqani network, which are so closely associated with ISI. So all the recent declarations, Nilova, that have been coming out, I mentioned about the Moscow format on the 20th of October. I speak about the Delhi Regional Security Dialogue, which took place in India, in Delhi, on the 10th of November. And even if you come to the more recent one, that is on the 6th of December, when the Russian President Vladimir Putin was on Indian soil, and they also came up with a joint declaration. In all of those, it is mentioned that at the minimum, the Taliban will have to put in place an inclusive government, will have to respect and safeguard the rights of the minorities, of women and children, ensure that the Afghan soil is not used as a staging ground for terror attacks against its neighbors and against other countries, because all the countries have realized that there are a large number of terrorist groups that are roaming freely in Afghanistan. We have, of course, the Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State of Khorasan. We have Islamic Movement of Uzbekistan. We have Pakistani groups like Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Taiba. We have also the Tajik groups like Jamaat-e-Ansarullah. We have the Uyghur group, the East Turkestan Islamic Movement. So we have so many terrorist groups, and I don't think the Taliban has been able to make any credible assertion or tell the international community.
Let's hope, amen to that. Let's hope that it actually happens, which I somehow doubt. Thank you very much, Ambassador Ashok Sajanhar.
This is All India Radio giving you the world news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts. The Directorate General of Civil Aviation has extended the suspension of scheduled international commercial flight operation till the 31st of January next year. This ban shall not apply on international cargo operations and flights specifically approved by the DGCA. However, international scheduled flights may be allowed on selected routes by the competent authority on case-to-case basis.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has congratulated Olaf Scholz on being elected as the Federal Chancellor of Germany. In a tweet, Mr. Modi congratulated him and said that he looks forward to working closely to further strengthen the strategic partnership between India and Germany. Meanwhile, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has congratulated Annalena Baerbock on her appointment as Germany's Federal Foreign Minister. Dr. Jaishankar in a tweet said he looks forward to bilateral cooperation in strengthening the strategic partnership and addressing shared regional and global challenges. 40-year-old Baerbock is Germany's first female foreign minister. The Chief Election Commissioner of India, Sushil Chandra, on Thursday addressed the officials of the Bangladesh Election Commission at India International Institute of Democracy and Election Management in New Delhi. The IIIDEM, under the aegis of the Election Commission of India, is organizing the Capacity Development Program for officials of the Bangladesh Election Commission as part of strengthening and capacity development of the Election Commission Secretariat project. Addressing the officials, Mr. Chandra said that IIIDEM, as the dedicated training institute of the Election Commission, has been organizing a series of such capacity development programs for officials from various election management bodies. So far, the IIIDEM has trained officials from over 90 countries.
A new report by the Reporters Without Borders, RSF, has said China is the world's biggest captor of journalists, with at least 127 reporters currently detained. China has justified the arrests of reporters and citizen journalists by accusing them of provoking trouble. A report.
The report, titled The Great Leap Backwards of Journalism in China, reveals China's violations against its own international commitments to freedom of opinion and expression. The report demonstrates how Beijing views journalism not as a tool to provide information to public to make informed decisions, but as an instrument of state propaganda. The Paris-based the RSF also noted that press restrictions had worsened with the pandemic. At least 10 journalists and online commentators were arrested in 2020 for the simple act of informing the public about the COVID-19 crisis in Wuhan. Till now, 2 of them, Zhan Zhang and Fang Bin, are still detained. The advocacy group's report also listed how Chinese authorities used the fight against terrorism as a pretext to detain Uyghur journalists reporting in Xinjiang. China has been accused of committing crimes against humanity against what it sees as Islamist and separatists in the majority Uyghur region. As per the report, other methods which China used are using its overseas diplomatic missions to attack journalists, media blockades, censorship of rising number of topics, which included the Me Too movement, natural disasters in addition to sensitive topics such as Tibet, Taiwan, corruption, etc., forcing local journalists to study Communist Party ideology and download a propaganda application on their phones, visa blackmail and expelling or intimidating journalists. It also focuses on the deterioration of press freedom in Hong Kong, which was once a model of press freedom. Foreign journalists too are facing trouble. China's intimidation of foreign reporters based on surveillance and visa blackmail forced 18 of them to leave the country in 2020. RSF ranks China 177th out of 180 in the 2021 World Press Freedom Index, just 2 places above North Korea. Desk report, World News.
Hong Kong media mogul Jimmy Lai, along with 2 other prominent activists, had been found guilty on Thursday for taking part in a vigil to mark the Tiananmen massacre in Beijing. Lai, Gwyneth Ho and Chow Hang Tung were convicted for inciting and taking part in an unlawful assembly. They were among thousands who defied a ban and took part in a vigil last June commemorating the 1989 crackdown at Tiananmen Square. More than 2 dozen politicians and activists have been charged over it. Lai is the founder of the new defunct Apple Daily newspaper in Hong Kong.
The number of Americans applying for unemployment benefits plunged last week to the lowest level in 52 years. It is an evidence that the U.S. job market is recovering from last year's coronavirus recession. The U.S. Labor Department said on Thursday that unemployment claims dropped by 43,000 to 1,84,000 last week, the lowest since September 1969. Overall, just under 2 million Americans were collecting traditional unemployment benefits the week that ended November the 27th. The World Health Organization (WHO) official has warned that wealthy countries may start hoarding COVID-19 vaccines again, threatening global supplies as they seek to shore up stocks to fight the new Omicron variant of coronavirus. The comments on Thursday by the agency's vaccine director, Kate O'Brien, come as supplies to an international dose-sharing program run by the WHO and vaccine charity Gavi have increased in the past few months due to donations from wealthy countries. The development comes after India eased limits on the export of vaccines.
New Zealand government plans to end tobacco smoking, a lifetime ban for those aged 14 or younger. Under a new law the government announced Thursday and plans to pass next year, the minimum age to buy cigarettes would keep rising year after year. The current minimum age to buy cigarettes in New Zealand is 18. Smoking rates have steadily fallen in New Zealand for years, with only about 11% of adults now smoking and 9% smoking every day. The daily rate among indigenous Maori remains much higher at 22%. Japanese billionaire Mizawa Yusaku has arrived at the International Space Station. The 46-year-old fashion entrepreneur and his assistant are the first Japanese private citizens to visit the Earth-orbiting station. The Russian Soyuz spacecraft carrying the pair lifted off from a cosmodrome in Kazakhstan shortly after noon on Wednesday.
The United Kingdom, Canada and Australia have joined the US-led diplomatic boycott of the 2022 Winter Olympics at Beijing over concerns about human rights in China. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced that no UK minister will attend the Winter Olympics. Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, said many partners around the world are extremely concerned by the repeated human rights violations by the Chinese government. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison on Wednesday said that the decision of diplomatic boycott was in Australia's national interest. These announcements come after the White House earlier this week confirmed that it will not send any official delegation to the global sporting event to be held in February to protest the genocide against minority Muslims in China's Xinjiang region. New Zealand also confirmed that it will not send its officials to Beijing. However, athletes from countries taking part in the diplomatic boycott will still compete in the games that will be held between the 4th and the 20th of February next year. The International Olympic Committee chief, Thomas Bach, has said that the IOC is pleased that athletes would still be able to take part in the events.
In women's hockey, India's match with China scheduled on Thursday in the ongoing Asian Champions Trophy in Donghae, South Korea, has been cancelled due to health concerns. Hockey India said in a tweet that with the health and safety of the players being paramount, the match will not take place. This is the third match of India cancelled due to COVID concerns. Now a report from the business world.
The BSE Sensex climbed 157 points to end at 58,807. The NSE Nifty also rose 47 points to finish at 17,517. In the global equity markets, Asia-Pacific stocks logged gains except Japan's Nikkei 225, which fell 0.5%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng climbed 1.1% and China's Shanghai Composite Index gained 1%. European markets were down in the intraday trade. Oil prices posted losses of around 0.5%. In the intraday trade, Brent crude was trading around $75.40 per barrel. Nishit Kumar for World News All India Radio.
And now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. Financial Times says European Medicines Agency is expecting Omicron vaccine in 3 or 4 months. The Washington Post quoting Pfizer says Omicron may require a 4th vaccine dose. And the Sydney Morning Herald reports thousands of people could face Christmas in isolation. And now a quick look at the headlines once again. Prime Minister Narendra Modi participates in the first summit for democracy at US President Joe Biden's invitation. Mr. Modi says democratic spirit is ingrained in Indians. India pays last respects to the Chief of Defence Staff General Bipin Rawat. Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett expresses condolences at the tragic loss of General Bipin Rawat. Finance Minister of India Nirmala Sitharaman says inclusion, investment, innovation and institutions should support global recovery. Farmer unions announce suspension of agitation against the 3 farm laws and related issues. India extends ban on scheduled international flights till January the 31st, 2022. And UK, Canada and Australia announced diplomatic boycott of the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics. India is celebrating the 152nd birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let us listen to his favorite bhajan, Vaishnav Jan, from artists from Tanzania on their Independence Day. And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.